So one of my biggest pet peeves in real estate, specifically dealing with agents, is the agents that think that they're attorneys. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? And what I mean by that is the ones that have the snarky know-it-all attitude that quote things like section 43A of, line number 2 and blah, 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 and everything, thinking they know every single answer and they know every single in and out. And they know how to strong arm people into really making a decision doing, X, Y, and Z. Now, the even more unfortunate thing is that in this past 6 months or a year, I've been seeing a lot more of that. And overall, dealing with these agents, it kind of hurts the industry and gets less things done. And here's why. My most recent example of agents who think they're attorneys is I actually called the listing agent because I have a client that's interested in a property. And the property has HOA, it obviously has general property taxes, but it also has Melrose/special assessments. Now, Melrose special assessments are usually put on newer build properties, and they're used to help, build new infrastructure like the roads, the street lights, the, fire stations, and like new schools, stuff like that. Newer developments, pretty much. And so my clients are interested in the property, but the Melrose and the special assessments, it is a deal killer because it was like around $200 per month for that, which is an additional payment that my client has to make on their mortgage payment. And so I called the listing agent and I was like, hey, just super quick here, clients they're interested in your property. However, the the Melrose/special assessments, it's a little steep for my clients. And so they were wondering if your sellers would be open to a lower offer to help offset it. And they asked how much. And I was like, well, at $200 a month, it has to be like around $30,000. Now, the thing about this property is it's been listed for 59 or 60 days, quite a while. And there haven't been many interest in it. And on top of that too, there are like 5 or 6 other homes for sale in the neighborhood. And so reverting back to my original story is that the simple question was, hey, look, are your sellers open to this? Because, it is a drive to get out there. And so we're just a little more curious to see if you guys are open to it. And if not, totally cool. And immediately the agent starts to do like the math over the phone. They're like, well, $200 a month. And then, what to use for the property tax rate and X, Y, and Z, and asking all these questions. Hey, what property tax rate did your lender use? And I was like, well, it's like around 1.2, which is a fair estimate. So they start doing the math and everything, and they want to talk to the lender. And so I put them in a group chat. And immediately they come out with an equation, of all the different, property taxes and whatnot to see if the numbers even make sense or to submit a full price offer. And like I said, the whole point of this phone call was it is a drive to get out there. So I don't want to really be wasting the listing agent's time, the seller's time, the buyer's time, anybody's really time. But I'm also not really looking to dive too deep into the exact, calculations and percentages and formulas and everything to calculate the exact property tax rate. Well, the agent wants to go back and forth over a span of like 2 hours and give me another phone call, then talk to the lender and do everything. And so it got to the point where I actually called my clients and I said, hey guys, this one does not pass the smell test. And what I mean by smell test, I mean, if things are already difficult and this much resistance from the very start with a question of, hey, are your sellers open to a lower offer? Then I can't imagine how difficult the rest of the escrow is going to be when it comes to, the appraisal, any request for repairs, anything else, and then the timelines as well. If they're this tight about just a basic question, I can't imagine how going through an escrow would be. And I get it. Some people want to keep a close eye out. But the thing about this property is that there's 5 other ones and it's been sitting on the market for 59 days. So at the end of the day, does that really help the seller clients to get into the nitty gritty details and scare away buyers from even looking at a property? Or is it better to say, hey, you know what? Let me talk to them and actually ask clients and say, hey, look, they like the property, but they want to submit a lower offer. Are you guys open to that? And if the sellers say yes, then cool. Encourage us to go look at the property and then we can figure out the rest of the details down the road. However, when dealing with agents who think they're attorneys and want to deal with things, all the details up front, it scares away buyers. That is what I consider not passing the smell test. And I'll call my clients and I'll tell them that up front. I'm like, hey guys, this one, things have been difficult from the very start. This one does not pass the smell test. Listing agents doing X, Y, and Z, they're just acting kind of weird and they're asking a billion trillion questions and referencing, so on and so forth. And from there, my clients, they do trust me and they say, okay, cool, James, we'll move on to the next one because we know if you're saying this and there's already trouble right now, it's probably not worth the headache. And so long story short, the listing agent said that they'll talk to the sellers and and get back to us, and then they never did. So whereas I've dealt with other listing agents, and I said, hey, look, these are the numbers and X, Y, and Z. Are you guys, open to it, or at least open to considering it? And they'll be like, you know what, let me talk to my clients and present that and see what we can do here. And I'm like, cool. And that's that. But it's an open dialogue instead of it being some sort of pissing contest. And that's what I appreciate a trillion times more.